Hi, everybody. Welcome to Our Sinclair. I'm John.
I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about World Series baseball.
Oh, man, I can't wait.
Now, Aaron, did you ever play any baseball as a lad?
You got that right. I played the heck out of some baseball back in the day. I was on some championship teams back in my younger days when I was playing. Yeah, I loved baseball. It was great. I was a huge baseball fan when I was a kid.
Now, between what years did you play baseball?
Well, I'd say 76 to 84.
Okay, so you played all the way up into your upper teen years.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's somewhere middle teens. Yeah. I played every year.
13 years old, you were still playing.
Absolutely, you got that right, man. I was okay. I wasn't great. I was, big guy.
Well, yeah. I played a lot of baseball too. In fact, I played baseball literally my whole life.
Yeah.
I started out in '85. And that was my first year, and then I went all the way up to my first, it was 100% Hurricane Baseball League behind the middle school. Mm-hmm. Then my last year, I'd aged out of the Hurricane Baseball League, and I had to go play over at the Valley Park.
The real league, yeah.
Then I quickly noticed that while I was awesome at the old Hurricane Baseball League, that didn't take you very far in the big boys.
Tell them why. Tell them the difference in these leagues, Bo, so they'll understand. Because I know.
In Hurricane Baseball League was sort of it's a competing organization with the real Little League.
Hideous today. But when we were younger, it was much better.
Yeah, and Hurricane Baseball League, it was. There wasn't a draft. It wasn't nearly as competitive and it was all about just giving the kids a chance to play.
Everyone played.
Everyone played.
So they'd have 10, 12 people in the field.
Yeah, you just stick like extra people in the outfield.
And what was the big difference, Bo?
The big difference was until you got to the very tippity top, they were using a pitching machine.
Yes, for every. In fact, where I played, there was nothing but the pitching machine.
Oh, really? Okay. In my last couple of years, they did have kid pitch, but yeah, the bulk of it was using the pitching machine. And the thing about the pitching machine is it does make it easier to hit, but it makes it incredibly difficult when you transition from that to having a real kid throwing a ball at you.
The funny thing with a pitching machine, no one knows this, and I don't know how it was when you were there, but we played with some pretty competitive guys. And so they knew how to do things to the pitching machine to make the ball funky.
Bob and weave.
They would spin it going in. You could do certain things to make the ball drop.
But why would you do that? Because your coach was the one feeding you the balls.
No, when I played, he wasn't.
Oh, maybe that's why they changed the rule.
That's right. So your coach, the fielding
coach?
team would,
wow.
Yes. And so we would see all kinds. I've been hit by the pitching machine. I was often, because I was a big burly guy, they'd be like, okay, stay up there, so we'd line this sucker up. And they'd line that sucker up and pop me upside the head or in the hip or whatever. I got hit with that thing a ton of times. In fact, I'd say I got hit by the pitching machine more than anyone in the league because I had a real bizarre batting stance, much like my bowling. I had my
You just straddled the plate.
I had my front leg turned almost completely backwards. I had my elbow up real high. And I crowded the plate as close as I could get to it. And it used to drive them nuts, but that's just the way I felt comfortable batting because I was a pull hitter, and I like to get in there real tight and pull the ball. Yeah. But I liked the pitching machine. It was a lot of fun. But it's definitely the B league, and I was never an all-star or anything. I was just I was a B plus or C player.
I was never good, but I loved it. I loved baseball, and even when I was playing in Babe Ruth, the reason why I stopped playing was because I was real into band, and it was tough to be in the marching band and do baseball at the same time because you start getting really, really tight with the schedule there. Now, when I moved to England. I joined, I was actually part of the British Baseball League over there. Played for the Sheffield Blade Runners.
Oh, good name. Yeah, I love that, yeah.
And I still wasn't very good.
What years were these?
This was 2009, 2010.
Not too long, yeah. Okay.
And that was interesting for me because that league used wooden bats.
Yeah.
And hitting with a wooden bat is a lot different than hitting with an aluminum bat.
We used wooden bats for most of my baseball career before we did use aluminum. I'll have to say I didn't like aluminum bats because they were so light. And also, the gimmick was people were afraid of wooden bats, the kids would get hurt. They would splinter, break, or something like that.
Exactly.
That never happened. Come on, it hardly ever happened for kids.
Right. Right. The reason why it happens in the majors is because those guys are hitting with velocity.
And the thing is, with the aluminum bat, when you're a kid and you've got a club that weighs an ounce, your instincts is to go over and whap somebody with this.
Exactly.
And so there were probably more injuries with the aluminum bat than there was
Not
with the
to
wooden
mention
bat.
the speed of the ball coming off those aluminum bats is incredible.
And that thing would shake. I mean, you hit the ball hard, it would rock you up. I never liked the aluminum bats. I was more of a, but I mean, we used them. They did transition over to them. When I played, we all got full uniforms, just like the big players got, and we all used the same helmets and bats. You didn't have your own stuff except for gloves.
Oh yeah, it was the
but
same thing.
now Luke plays.
Everybody's got their own special
It's
stuff.
actually, baseball sort of devolved, because in the league Luke was in last year, they gave you a T-shirt, and that's it. So like we looked like full baseball players. I had when I played for the Astros, full Astros suit with even the things on the socks.
the stirrups, yeah, man.
When I played for the Cardinals, I had a full Cardinal suit with the hat.
So
and
that doesn't happen anymore.
No, well, not for Luke's league, it didn't.
Is this Hurricane Baseball League?
Yeah. They bought shirts and it was lame. That's so much lamer, And also, no one had cleats when I was a kid either.
Well, here's the thing. Back in those days, you had to return your uniform at the end of the season.
Oh, yeah, you didn't get to keep that
So,
thing.
I'm sure now the kids want to keep the stuff. And
but who cares about a shirt? I mean, I'd rather have I want to look like a real ball player.
I understand.
Not like a geek.
I'm with you.
But so that's changed. And now everyone's got their own bat. Everyone's got their own helmet. Everyone's got, it's expensive, too.
Yeah.
You can play baseball fairly cheap back in the day because they would provide all the stuff.
Right.
That was the whole point.
Yeah. And I did play quite a few years of church league softball, which was oddly competitive because you've got all these guys out there trying to relive the glory of their past years. So I did that for a while over there at the Valley Park.
I never could do softball. It didn't do it for me. I tried. It was like, it didn't do it for me.
But yeah, so I love baseball. It's my favorite sport.
And I love baseball video games too.
Yeah.
I've played tons of these things.
Yeah. What is the first baseball video game you remember playing?
It would probably be something on the PC. Probably something like an Earl Weaver or something. I mean, way back.
Really?
Maybe Coco Color Baseball would be in the running. Oh, of course, I'd take all that back. Probably the first one I ever played was probably Atari Baseball on the 2600. That was probably the first one I ever played because that was way back.
Was that Home Run or was it Real Sports?
No, I think it was before Real Sports.
Well, Home Run was the first one.
This was the real bad one.
Yeah, Home
before
Run.
Real Yeah, so that would probably be the first one. But what about you?
Star League Baseball for the Atari.
Oh wow, that's one that was another one. That was like and you had stats and stuff.
Right.
Now,
and actually no, there were no stats in Star League Baseball. It was very similar to this game that we're playing.
Oh really? I thought Star League you could program in stats for
no,
them. Did they have? Maybe it was a later one.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so. But yeah, this one was very plain Jane, but I still enjoyed it.
And then you played Earl Weaver, right? With Earl Weaver had season discs, and you could it would update the rosters.
That's cool.
You could get so you could play that. That was one I thought was a pretty fun game. When we go way back for baseball games, before we get into this one, I don't know about you, but my number one baseball game of all times, and I'm talking pre Neo Geo because I know we both like All Star Baseball 2, or
Baseball Stars 2.
But the Intellivision baseball was in my opinion, that's the high water mark for baseball games. I mean, that's one of the few games on the Intellivision where that controller was a star. Mm-hmm. It worked perfectly. It was a perfectly playable game. You felt like you had full control of the game. That was sort of the benchmark that I judge all the other classic baseball games. And you got to think that came out in probably 82, 83. So it was way back when that came out. So that's the one I look at is like when I think of the early baseball games, that's my favorite one. Do you have an opinion on which one you like from back then?
Oh, man. It's definitely, once you get into the Nintendo, baseball games just got so much better because Japanese people really like baseball.
Yeah.
And so the original NES baseball is no great shakes, but once you start getting into baseball stars for the NES is great. Little League baseball is surprisingly good. There's a game called Bad News Baseball.
Yeah,
very good.
I remember playing that. There's there's like a street baseball. I remember playing something like that.
I'm sure there's stuff like that too. Now, in the modern times, there's a really good series of baseball games called Backyard Baseball.
That's what I'm thinking of. Backyard. That's it.
Those are sort of the Game Boy Advance era, the 32-bit era, and those are very good.
Another game I played a ton was Hardball. That was a game I played quite a bit back in the day.
I forgot to mention Bases Loaded. The Bases Loaded series has that same behind the pitcher perspective.
Now
as
that came
Hardball
from the arcade, didn't it? Did Bases Loaded, was that an arcade?
I think that was a homegrown NES title.
Do you remember the baseball game that was? I think it was called World Series Baseball in the arcade.
Oh yeah,
unrelated to this.
World Series Baseball,
where it had the flick stick for batting, which they also released a similar situation with the John Elway football. That little flick stick did a great job.
Oh yeah, and it's a cool thing for sure.
You know, something else we should mention since we're talking about old baseball games. Did you ever play any of the old bat and ball, like physical, like mechanized?
I'm glad you mentioned that because I would love to have one of those.
Those are so good.
I
used to play those all the time. And these are from the 60s and 70s. And they were so good, and they really got advanced there towards the end.
Over in Myrtle Beach, they have an arcade with probably 30 of them just lining the walls.
Really?
And every time I go to Myrtle Beach, I sit down with a big stack of quarters and play them. They're so much fun, and it's so cool to watch the runners advance.
It's amazing. The mechanisms and stuff. I mean, God, I hate to have to repair one.
Yeah. Now, when you first mentioned that wasn't what I thought you were talking about. I thought you were talking about the home run derby style mechanical games that have the pinball mechanism where you get the pitch. The ball's delivered, but there's no fielders or anything. It's all on an LED screen.
Yeah.
And those go for big bucks these days. When you win, you get baseball cards. You know, they spin baseball cards.
I like the older ones better.
They are. They're all crazy expensive though.
I think what do they call it? Pitch and bat games. Yeah, those are great.
Yeah.
So we know what we like. Let's talk about and see whether this joins the ranks.
All right.
And the game we're looking at this week, Boatster, and I was surprised that this existed and that it got picked by our selection committee. So they went out on a limb here. This is World Series Baseball, also known as Slugger in some areas. So, which I'd never heard of either one of these. I mean, I've heard World Series Baseball. That game's been batted around. That name's been batted around a lot, but I never heard of this particular one. This came out in '85. I believe this was on the 48K. You know, no great shakes there. Published by Imagine Software, and this was authored by Platinum Productions. But now these guys actually have done a lot of good stuff that we've either looked at or heard of. Amongst which were Beachhead 2. You know, I love Beachhead 2. Dam Busters, Lode Runner, Raid Over Moscow, Rambo, Tapper, and Zaxxon. This was programmed by a fellow named Ian Morrison. He worked on Beachhead 1 and 2, among others. Chase HQ. He worked on Enduro Racer, Lode Runner, a lot of good stuff. The Outrun series on here in Tapper. Another fellow that worked on this was David J. Anderson. He worked on some of the same stuff. Plus, he also did Kung Fu Master, Rambo, Shark Attack. And then lastly, F. David Thorpe. He worked on a ton of stuff. I believe he probably did the opening graphics. That's just a guess. He worked on Batman, Bruce Lee, Blue Max, the Daley Thompson games.
So everything about this is pedigree.
Yes, these guys were well versed in programming for the Spectrum. Now, so what you've got here is a 1 to 2 player baseball game. Now, I will say I did not get to play 2 players at this. And the game gives you what you would expect in terms of options. You've got you can change the difficulty. There are 3 difficulty settings, 1 or 2 player. You can also change your controls. And I believe this game, at least according to the documentation, somehow supports 2 joysticks. I don't know. How would you do that back in the day? Do you know?
I have no idea how you would do that. Maybe there was a Spectrum Interface 16 that had 2 joystick ports.
This also came out on the Amstrad, the C64, and the Commodore Plus 4, and there was a PC booter version of this. If you remember those, the DOS games, it's sort of like the Amiga, you just put the disc in, and they would boot up. So let's talk about this game. It is baseball. Full stop. I mean, it gives you the opening screen is, when you start a game, I will say, there's a lot of quirks in this game. And then when you start the game, you get a rendition of the national anthem, America's national anthem. You get like the cut rate version, which is the same thing, by the way. They do it the exact same way that Hardball did it. They just play the first verse. That's all you get. You know, the first little section.
The first phrase.
You are on a field. That looks, it's just sort of a generic feel, but it's rendered pretty nicely, Boat, I think.
I think it looks like a classic baseball stadium from like the 40s with the grandstand seating.
With the one exception, the Cowboy Stadium sized full motion television that's in dead center field.
Not too many of those in old Ebbets
No,
Field.
in '85, if you show me the stadium's gonna, I mean, this screen, you would never put this screen in a real stadium because you would be losing a third of your capacity.
Yeah.
If you put this screen in the field, but I mean, it's still for the game purposes. It fits the role. At the bottom, you get your particulars. One thing you get to do is when you start playing is enter your name, which is not, so I guess you could pick a name of a team. I just put my name in there. So, what is this game in a nutshell? Well, I'm assuming, first of all, this game has instructions, we should mention, that actually describe to you what baseball is. Because, of course, this game coming out not in America, baseball, and you would know this better than me since you lived over there, baseball's popularity in the UK, for example, not high, right? I mean,
no. I mean, people are aware of its existence.
Yeah.
Just like we're aware of rugby's existence.
Right. Or cricket. Like I know cricket's there, but until I actually learned how to understand how it worked, I had no idea how it worked.
Now, people in the UK have an advantage, and this is borne out in the instructions, in that most of them are familiar with the game rounders.
Right. Which wasn't that supposedly where baseball sort of sprung?
There are many theories about the roots of baseball, but surely
Abner Doubleday was involved.
Yeah.
That's for darn
Abraham
sure.
Lincoln was involved.
Yeah, he also was one of the first pro wrestlers. He did everything back in the day. So, in case you're not real familiar with baseball, you have 9 fielders who stand out there. One of which is a pitcher, and then you've got a batter that comes up and tries to get the ball in play to get on one of the 3 bases and eventually get home to 4th base. I mean, that's as basic
That's
description as you could give. This game allows you to, well, you'll either be the pitcher or the batter to start, and if you are the batter, it's a simple task. The pitcher will start the wind up and throw the ball, and in a bizarre twist, both the actual gameplay footage you're going to look at is on the huge screen.
Right.
So I thought this was clever.
Not that different than going to a sports event today.
Yeah, except you're not playing. But
right.
When you see the ball sort of float towards you, I will say every pitcher in this game is a knuckleballer because the ball literally just floats at the most slowest speed towards you, and then your batter will hit the ball or he'll miss. I don't know if I ever saw a ball in this. I think I either swung at every pitch or I hit it.
I don't even see a place in the scoreboard where they would record balls, so perhaps balls are not present in the game.
And in baseball, if a pitcher throws the ball and you don't swing it, it's not in the strike zone, it's called a ball. And if you get 4 of those, you get to go on the base.
And a strike zone is between basically your knees and your armpits.
Although it's an arbitrary point, depending on who the umpire is. So anyway, this game, when you're batting, the button swings the bat. Now, you'll watch the ball come at you, and when the ball gets where you think is a good spot for you to swing the bat, you just hit the button, you swing, and then your guy takes off for first base, no matter what happens. Now, one of 3 things can happen, one of 4. You can hit a foul ball, which is a ball out of play. As far as I can tell, you can never go after these balls.
No, you can't catch a foul ball out of play. Yeah.
You could also get you could hit the ball in play and get to first base. You could also hit the ball in play and get thrown out at first base, or you could hit the ball in play and it gets caught in the air.
Right, which is like every baseball game.
Right. I mean, that's pretty much standard for now. Here's where the deviations begin. Right. For starters, fielding a ball in this, not easy. I had all kinds of trouble, and the runners are all like the fastest men on earth.
Right.
They are super fast.
True to form for the Spectrum, this game plays extremely quickly when you have player control in the field.
You're right. Now, when I first played this, I just used the default setting to play. And I went up to bat and scored about 20 runs or so on the pitcher.
Really?
I just murdered him. So I never played on that setting again. I always played on the hardest setting. On the hardest setting, it's as far as I can tell, what it does is it basically makes you not bat as well. And so that's how so the games would be like 3-0, 2-0. Occasionally I could squeak a run in, 2-1. So I think that's what the difficulty does, because one thing you can't do in this game is drastically affect. You can't really do anything to affect your batting. I mean, there's a sweet spot, I think, but I can't sit here and say so with certain certainty on that.
Well, that's the problem that I had was I was never really sure. It's actually very similar to Cliffhanger, where when I would hit the ball, I would be happy that I hit the ball, but I wasn't exactly sure how?
Yeah, well, I mean, in real baseball, you sort of swing and hope for the best, but when you're a major leaguer, you know what you're doing. You can put the ball in place.
Listen, what I did was I just closed my eyes and just...
Yeah, just like the natural, just point it up to the light. Well, so I'm going to go on the assumption that there's a sweet spot that you can hit the ball at, but
absolutely.
I didn't find it.
Yeah.
So as a batter, and you really can't control your batting.
And
you
here's the thing,
swing.
too. It's whenever you're watching the Jumbotron view, you don't see the ball come off the bat in a way that it would. It's almost like the ball is always too close to where it should be to get a hit. So it's an inexact science.
It's every pitch is an ephus pitch. I mean, it's just if you know what that is, just a big weird. Oil Can Boyd was the last major leaguer I saw throw one. It's a big. You ever seen Brewster's Millions? I mean, like big looping pitch. It goes.
Oh, okay.
It's
just like at the end of Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
Where he has to throw the underhanded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything in this is. It's funny. Everything aside from the pitching is at breakneck speed, but the pitching's mind-numbingly slow. Mm-hmm. It's very strange. Now, as a batter, like I said, you really can't affect much. You hit the ball, you take off. You can take extra bases. Against the computer, I can never get any extra bases. They never screwed up, even on dumb mode. Mm-hmm. But you could try to take them, and you could get thrown out. You can't steal because once you're on a base and the pitcher's ready to pitch, you can't move.
You can't lead off either.
In real baseball, you can lead off the bases, or you can even try to steal the base and hope the catcher doesn't throw you out. You can't do that in this.
Right.
Now, something else as a batter, in like most games, you could sort of affect the angle of the ball by putting the joystick in a certain direction.
Put a little English on
You couldn't do that in this. I couldn't do it at all.
I couldn't. I read something in the manual that made me believe that the joystick could affect either like the speed of your hit or something like that.
Yeah, it says here you can vary the speed and height of your swing by using left, right, and up and down.
I couldn't do any of that.
I couldn't either. I could hit the ball, but I couldn't really affect where the ball went.
Right.
Now, so as a batter, that's on offense. That's it. You're pretty much that's the way the game goes. Now, let's switch over to the defensive side when you're pitching. As a pitcher, you can hold left, right to have the ball allegedly go float in that direction, or up and down to throw a slower, faster pitch. Now, much like batting, I couldn't get a ton of action off the ball. I could get some, but very little. And one thing I noticed is when I pulled back into the ball, I would often get murdered because that's like the old slow pitch. And in this game, that pitch gets sat on the higher levels. They crush it. Also, as a fielder, when the ball is in play, much like a lot of baseball games, it will light up the nearest outfielder to catch the ball.
Right.
Well, this is no easy task because your guy moves real fast, and you're in such a hurry that you can easily just roll right past the ball or throw it to the wrong base.
Yeah, and it's not like, well, first of all, when the ball is in the air, it doesn't flash. Your guy doesn't flash. You just start moving the joystick and you notice that you have control over one of the guys.
Right.
In later baseball games, but really not that much later than 1985, I'm talking about like maybe 86, 87, baseball games would adopt a more proactive outfielding approach where when the ball would be hit, you would get control over a guy, but he would start running in the general direction that he needed to.
Yeah.
That would have been useful here, or give us more time with the ball in the air.
One thing that a game like in television baseball did is when you hit the ball, it would make a whistle, and you could tell how hard the ball was hit, and if it was in the air.
That
for
audio
long.
cue is essential.
Yeah, and so that's not here. Now you do get fly balls, and you can catch them. I have caught plenty. And the ball, it does look has a different look when it's in the air, so you sort of know it's a pop fly.
Well, yeah.
But it's still pretty fast.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's like a line drive, and a lot of times you'll catch it without even moving because it was like straight up the middle or something. I've noticed that a lot.
Right.
But running your offense is not easy. A lot of times when the ball gets hit, like down the lines, it'll activate your baseman instead of your outfielders. And in real baseball, your third baseman would never run out into deep into the outfield. No. That'd be insane. Your outfielder would run over. So that was weird. The lack of pitch variety, all this stuff, was just for a game. Again, this is an 85. And by baseball standards of gameplay, by that point, this is pretty archaic.
Yeah.
I compare it mostly to color baseball and the Coco, and color baseball and the Coco is way better. It's got a lot more action. It sounds better. It looks probably about as good. I mean, this actually looks okay. And the funny thing is, this game's not a complete throwaway. I like the Titantron thing. It's a pretty clever
That's
angle.
the game's most redeeming feature.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they couldn't make the players on either side different colors.
Yeah.
Like the Spectrum can do that. It can do it. I don't know why.
I'm assuming this is a color issue, but I mean, who could say? I couldn't figure out why they made the ball so slow.
Oh, we should talk about one other thing.
Yeah.
There is something in this game that I've not seen in a lot of games, including Star League Baseball. You actually have the ability to put on the shift.
You can bring your outfielders in.
Yeah, you can bring your outfielders in, which is, I mean, I don't know why you'd want to do that, because you can't. It's not like you know who's coming up and you know he's a small ball hitter. You want to keep your outfielders out, but you can bring them in if you want.
Yeah, that was weird. Actually, bringing them in I did it a lot, but I mean, it's a chance, because if something gets over you, you're boned.
Yeah, it's over.
And the thing is, if you don't bring them in, even if something goes over you, you're probably still going to get hosed. So I often used to bring them in a lot. The game has some, aside from the obvious just the baseball issues, the game has some wacky, I mean, I'll give them credit. They put some wackiness in there. For starters, and I had to address this right away, after the first half inning and then again later on in the game, I usually play 3-inning games, here come the cheerleaders would come out. Now, cheerleaders in baseball, there are none. There are no cheerleaders in American baseball. I think the Japanese actually do have cheerleaders.
Yeah, there's all kinds of
games.
wacky stuff in Asia.
But in America, we've got no cheerleaders for baseball. That's a football thing. That much said, it's still pretty funny to see the chorus line come out and do their routine.
It's very funny the first couple times, but when you're trying to get through a game, there's
it's not
no skipping
skippable.
the cheerleaders.
Yeah. I don't know. I just that's part of the flavor.
It's part of it.
They show advertising and they put little messages on the Megatron out in the outfield. That's funny. I wonder if they got paid for those ads.
Yeah, and there's W.H. Smith's, and there's somebody else that I wasn't, but W.H. Smith's is a bookstore. And so in the UK, and so this was obviously baseball played in England, World Series held in England for the first time ever.
I just saw as we were watching this video here that they had an advertisement for Robert Redford in The Natural come by over the screen, a special screen. I thought that was funny. So they put some. It's not like they just threw this out there. There's some efforts, but they put this. And so here's the way I'm going to approach this boat. And by the way, 2 players in this would probably be more fun. We could agree with that because you're both at the same penalties.
Right.
This game was made for a people who aren't familiar with baseball. They don't care about the little nuances or the little rules or the little things. And so what you've got here is a perfectly serviceable, very low-end, very simple game of baseball.
I agree with that.
At the bottom rung of a decency.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is several steps above like real sports and stuff. But even in real sports, you can do stuff you can't do in this, including stealing and stuff.
Right.
But this is a very low end version with some flair, put into it. That's right. And so it turns out to be an okay game. Did I play a bunch of games of this? Yes, more than any man should, because I didn't want to talk out my butt. Because this is baseball, we're representing the good old USA in this one, and so we had to have our ducks in a row. I can say that the difficulty levels do work. I can crush the computer on the lowest setting every time. It's a murder. I mean, I jump out to an insurmountable lead. On the hardest level, I never won. But I would keep it pretty close in 3 innings. And in the medium setting, I could pretty much crush the computer at that too. What were your experiences on that?
Exactly the same. When I played it on easy, I was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And then when I bumped it up, but the problem is that I just had a hard time fielding. I mean, I had a hard time wrapping my mind around it. And the game moves so quickly. The runners move so quick around the base paths. I had a hard time getting people out.
The runners are all like Ricky Henderson level speedsters. And even coming out of first base, they don't mess around. They're out of the box quick.
Yeah.
And so
and there's a pathing issue too, where it will activate a guy that it shouldn't, or at least in your mind, it's like, why did you activate this guy? I want to get this guy's closer to the ball. Or in baseball, if you're familiar with the game, this fielder would never, like you were saying with the third baseman going down to the outfield, that would never happen.
Yeah,
so
he would be killed.
Yeah,
and you can easily get to base on a grounder in this game. I mean, like I said, and this happens in Major League Baseball. if you're the fastest guys in the
Right.
league. But otherwise, a ball hit to like the shortstop, you're not going to get to first base.
Yeah,
He's going to toss you out.
Unless you're Ichiro, there's no.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, on the most basic level of baseball, if you just want to play some American baseball just kind of get the flavor, you can do worse. And like I said, this game does have flair. I mean, I do like that.
And I think that the stadium is presented attractively.
Yeah, I agree with that. But overall, for someone who really wants to play some proper baseball, this ain't going to cut it.
Yeah.
And that's a fact. But like I said, there was enough charm in it to where I didn't want to come in here and bury it. But it was amongst the lower level 8-bit baseball games that I've played.
Yeah.
There you go. I did look up some pricing on this, by the way, or some scores on this. World of Spectrum gives this a 7.52. Crash reviewed this in issue 16, gave this a 91%. They were down. They were down with the clown. And Sinclair user looked at this and gave it a 3 out of 5. Boat.
Sinclair gave this a 91 in 1992.
Crash did. You know, in 85, it gave it a 91%.
Okay.
Yeah. So what do you get from our listeners here?
Well, on the old Discord, Chris Fold says, the music, the cheerleaders, the adverts, the atmosphere, this has everything except the hot dog and popcorn to make it 100% real. This is a simple yet weirdly addictive, simplistic baseball game that comes into its own in 2-player mode. The pitching and batting action takes place on the Jumbotron with the graphics eerily reminiscent of Grand National.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Yes.
With the fielding looking like a painting by L.S. Lowry. Lit combined, it just seems to work. 7.5 out of 10. Paul, a.k.a. Hermsky, says, 8 out of 10. I was never into baseball as a sport. However, the best way of playing the game for me was sitting at a specky. Much easier. The game itself is fast-paced and colorful, providing an elated experience. The electronic billboard is a fantastic way of showing your player close up in action whilst viewing the pitch in full. I do wonder if they sold sponsorship for the advertising on the big screen, but gave the game an authentic feel. Oh, and love the cheerleaders. Made me chuckle. Frodo NL says, being a baseball fan, let's go Mets.
No, you poor guy.
The only thing I do not like about this game are the cheerleaders. This is baseball, not rugby with too much protection, otherwise known as American football.
Oh, please, get that out.
Using the Jumbotron to give the player a good view of the action is simply brilliant. 8.5 out of 10. And Graham Vebke says, this is a 7 out of 10 baseball game built to the strengths of the spectrum. It's quite fast-paced for a baseball game, yet it maintains the overall gameplay feel of baseball. You don't have as much control over pitching as you might in other games, but this simpler view might appeal to those who aren't nuts for baseball like myself as a Seattle Mariners and Yokohama Bay Stars fan.
He sounds nuts for baseball if he's in the Yokohama Bay Stars.
Yeah. The batting and fielding controls are done well, and overall the controls in this game make sense. The presentation here makes me want to explore World Series basketball by the same developers. Very clever use of the big screen to zoom in on the action. 2-player mode sounds like it would be fun too.
I did look at World Series basketball, by the way. I accidentally loaded it up. And we'll talk about this. I'm sure we'll get into this one day. I think it's got a little more potential than
Curtis asks in the chat, can you bunt in this game?
No.
You can't.
No, there's no specialty batting of any sort. I should mention, first of all, those scores were much higher than I would have anticipated. I'll be honest with you. This goes for $2 to $16 on for the tape. If you're interested in picking this one up, they're out there, but I don't feel obliged to go get it. But I mean, it's as simple and it's as low end as baseball can be. But it is baseball.
Baseball, Ray.
Yeah.
So, we want to thank all of the fine folks that are watching us live right now. We record Our Sinclair live every Friday around 6:30 Eastern Time, and you can join us on twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming. Want to thank Picard 2010 for being here, the web developer, L. Curtis B, Ed Van Helen from the Man Cave. We got Brock 101 is here. Pixels at Dawn Gaming doing a great job modding in the chat. Thank you guys so much. And 10 Minute Amiga Retrocast was here too. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And we also want to thank all of our Twitch supporters, or Twitch subscribers rather. Rushi MSX, Peeplo, Frodo NL, Anguish Auteur, Lasooner, Bike Me, The Slow Norris, Chris Folds, Buck Owens, Pakutakete, Wing Chun Wolf, Brother Bill, Still Adolescing, Silver Streak 72, and Go Sub. And just a reminder, if you subscribed to us previously on Twitch Prime with your Amazon Prime subscription and you'd like to, again, you have to manually reactivate that. So if you want to do that, we'd appreciate it. And finally, we have a new Spectrum supporter this week.
Oh boy.
His name is Mark Downey. We welcome him.
Welcome, Mark.
And I want to thank him and the rest of our supporters. Hermsky, Andrew Waite, David Spencer, Cap'n Crispy, Laurent Giroux, Gary Heather, Eric Nelson, Harbonaut, Graham Vebke, Frodo NL, Tapes from the Crypt, Pixels at Dawn, Chris Folds, Paul Harrington, and Christopher Hassal. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. And if you want to support the show, head on over to patreon.com/Our Sinclair.
Thanks, guys.
Next week, Aaron, Paul Bossman Harrington has chosen Cabal.
Cabal. Is that based on the arcade
Based
game?
on the arcade game.
Okay, yeah, man. Good choice, boss, I think. We'll find out,
We'll find out. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Until then, rewind tape.
And press play.